Alright, so what's up, my Kaiser pups and Cinesluts? We're here for episode 2 of the reviews for Joe Exotic. Um, so pretty much I'm just going to start out like I started out the rest of the videos. I'm going to try filming this on actual YouTube to see if the upload time's a little quicker and a little easier. I'm sorry, Kristen, I didn't feel like changing my shirt. I did add a nice cardigan, so we'll go with that. So we start off with episode 2 right away. They do the whole cut part of the video where the I forget the trainer or the keeper's name, gets her arm basically ripped off from the tiger, because as not a real keeper, she has no idea how to handle the wild animals. But the biggest part of this episode, no matter how crazy it is Joe's paramedic jacket. I don't know where this man found it. I don't know how he got it on so quickly, and the fact that he had it ready for him for the episode is mind blowing. That being said, I love the jacket. And I wish I had it myself. But the first thing that comes out of his mouth, instead of like figuring out if this keeper's okay, is that he's never going to financially recover from this. Now, a man that is in this for the whole conservation aspect of all this, his biggest thing is worrying about his money. If you don't have the keepers that are there, you don't have the people keeping up with the animals, and you don't have your zoo at that point. And this person's supposed to be one of your misfit gang family, and the fact that you're caring about putting this jacket on and going over it, and the fact that he goes in right away to the like, I get like why he did it, but he goes right into the gift shop and he goes, all right, so I'm gonna get ahead of this before the media gets to you, that someone's arm was ripped off and I can either give you a rain date or your money back. Like I get getting in front of the media on the whole thing. It's not it's the whole aspect of he had to do that, and the fact that he has someone there that is unqualified and untrained, that he has to explain for all that. And then they cut back to the woman in the hospital. This is most of this episode is basically referring, like, they're not going to refer to themselves as a cult, besides Joe does later in the episode. But the fact that this is this whole cult mentality that's going to go on, that basically leads back into everyone that's in here. She stays in the hospital, and the reason she doesn't stay so long, I think most people picked up on it, but the little things here, she had the option to have reconstructive surgery. It could have taken a year, but she would have had her whole hand. She decided to take off her hand just so Joe wouldn't get in any trouble. I don't know where in my head, I don't think I'd protect anyone at that point. I'd want my own hand back so I could go back and do everything. But she thought the whole idea of the media winning if she stays in the hospital, she'd rather cut her hand off. Victoria and I talked about it like crazy amounts, and she was the main one that brought it up. She goes, "Did you catch that? Did you catch the fact that she'd rather her hand come off than have Joe look bad?" Like the fact that he didn't have any precautions in line besides two barriers of a fence from a 500, 600 pound tiger, and let alone maybe 50 of them in a cage at once. And his whole mentality, basically, I'm sure he somehow got into her head to say, either lose your hand or you don't come back. Again, I don't know if that's for sure, but the fact that he didn't have enough safety in place or enough training for these people to be like, look, don't ever stick your hand in the cage or you're going to get it ripped off. But he portrays himself as going into these cages and saying, "Oh, it's completely fine. They're basically large house cats." Obviously not. Like a house cat's not gonna rip your arm off. Yeah, they're gonna tear you up and everything, but a wild animal's gonna do that, and that should have been his first line of defense. Like, look, no one goes in the cages, no one touches them. That should be their big thing, and that should have showed her right there and everyone that comes to those places that, oh, these wild animals, as he's portraying them as everyone can own them, can actually do massive damage to them. And these things belong in the wild, not in this cage, because obviously if you're sitting in a cage for so long, even getting to know this person for however long she'd been there at this point, you're still going to get attacked. Like, it was ridiculous. They later lead on into the episode, Joe's whole thing, he admits that, like, he's addicted to the power of owning these animals. But he contradicts himself constantly with going, "Oh, I do it for the animals, I do it for this." If you love the animals, you shouldn't have that idea of that you have any type of power in any sort of sense. The animals have the power no matter what you think. You have the power of, no matter what, I have all the power, blah blah blah. Like, look at me, I get to control these animals. The whole idea, again, I've said it in the first, it's the control aspect of everything. Like, you don't have any control. You could, yeah, you can feed them and they're going to be loyal to a point of you feeding them and taking care of them, But take it back to that keeper. All it takes is one wrong look, wrong turn, and you're gone. You're done. Um, and that's why owning these animals is so dangerous. You have no idea. You have no idea their mindset of what's going to happen. They decide that day, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be in this cage. I don't want to handle. I don't want to be handled anymore. And it again leads back to Rick Kirkman creating this documentary behind the documentary. Pretty much him giving Joe that extra bit of power. He's feeding into it. He's making him feel like, hey, like look. Since you're this top end tiger handler, I'm gonna do this video on you, and it's gonna make you top of the line. Everyone's going to follow you. Everyone's going to believe in you. No matter what you do, you're going to be backed. And that's what leads into like his full, I think, demise of everything, is the fact that he has all this power. He doesn't have any of the power. He might have the loyalty of, again, the whole Coltman following of his misfit band of family that's backing him, but there's no power there. People are going behind his back to do different things here and there. The keepers, I don't understand it, because the keepers are trying so hard to keep up with this, and Joe's more so worried about his image on his TV channel, the production company, and how he looks in front of all these people. Yeah, you look cool because you have these tigers, but where's your aspect of saving these animals? There is none. There's nothing. And just the idea, also, I think I said it in the first episode, but him and Doc constantly calling these tigers sexier and stuff like that. Like, they're turned on by these animals. Like, I'm not saying they want to sleep with them or anything like that, but like the idea of you're turned on by himself to owning these tigers, and the whole idea of the power. Again, like, you're not there to protect the animals. You're there to boost your own ego, which is not a good mentality to go into any sort of animal handling. Like, yes, you have to have a certain amount of confidence when you're handling these animals, but again, they shouldn't be handled. You shouldn't have to have that confidence. You should have that confidence to be like, look, we're going to promote the idea of conservation and what needs to be done. And yeah, these animals are here because they can't be released into the wild. Well, they say that, but the fact that they're breeding them and they're trying to hide the fact that they're breeding them is a whole issue in itself. Is the breeding isn't going to help anyone or anything at this point unless you're doing it through an accredited zoo or a whole program for it. And they're not doing anything like that. And then it feeds into a little bit into the later bit of the episode. Is they cut back to Carol, as they do, and she says some kind of quote of she thinks everyone else is using tigers as financial gain. No shit, they're using it as financial gain. They know that if people are going to flock, they're going to flock constantly because they get this up close personal aspect of dealing with these big cats. But she's no better than that. She has lines out the door for him, and she's charging an exorbitant amount of money just to come see what everyone thinks is a massive amounts of circus tigers that she rescued from people's houses, which she did. But when I get into the third episode, she contradicts all of herself at this point. She thinks she's above it. She thinks she's basically like Joe and Doc's whole mentality that they're God. She thinks she's a god of big cat rescue. She isn't. She's no better. She's collecting that money for herself and, yes, feeding the animals. But if you look at the upkeep of what her rescue is a small cage. And she even mentions they all need 400 square miles. She has nothing close to that. They're all in about the same amount of space that Joe has, yet maybe it's 1 to 2 animals per cage. But that doesn't make it any better than hers being a zoo. Like, there's no better. You have people here gawking at these animals, and you're running around with your camera going, oh, look at what I've done. Look what I do. If you're a true conservationist, you're a true environmentalist, you're not going around doing that. You're doing it to help the environment and help these animals. Yes, there's ways to promote yourself and everything like that, but what she's promoting is herself. She's not promoting any of these animals. She'll show these animals, but she'll show herself right back in there. She's going, look what I did. And that leads into the whole idea that she has people coming in. She has hundreds of people coming in, and they have different levels of keepers and handlers and stuff like that. It's a whole pyramid scheme. You just keep buying into it more and more and more and more until you reach that pinnacle point, but you're never going to reach that pinnacle point because you're not Carol. You're never going to be Carol. You're not going to be her husband either, who is still... You watch the whole series, and you're watching... Constantly she's watching him. She's making sure he's saying the right things because she's brainwashing just as much as Doc and Joe are. That she's doing it to a point, though, she's using it, I keep saying it, but as a guise to make her conservation seem like it's actually something that's more noteworthy. It's not any more noteworthy than what Joe and Doc are doing. Yes, she's more hands-off, but she's still so hands-on in the fact that she thinks she has control over these animals and control over what their fate is. She has no better control of what Joe and Doc have. small cages, tiny environment. That's not what they're used to, and she's making it seem like she was rescuing them from these zoos, roadside zoos, and circuses and stuff like that. And but what better life are they having at this point? Yeah, they're not performing, but they're still being gawked at. They're still being in tinier cages. You're not doing anything better. You're taking that money and you could be improving. You could be buying more land. You could be buying an area where they could have more free roam, and you can stop bringing in these animals and start feeding your money into different efforts in different countries that have these animals. But again, from what I'm seeing, the little research that I'm doing and everything, and trying to respond as best I can to it, she's not doing anything like that. And if she is, it's not a significant amount. Again, she could be trying to find these tigers into different sanctuaries in different areas, and um, like in India, India has several different reserves and preserves out there, and they have large amounts of land for it. But she's not doing that. She thinks because she has all this money, she has boundless amounts of money, that she can just take whatever she has there and make it seem like it's a glory land for these animals. It's not. And then they tease into it, and I can't wait to get into the next reaction. I mean, the whole third episode is just Carol, pretty much. No spoilers or anything, but going into her whole missing husband theory. Um, we'll get it. We'll dive deeper into that. And then we start. I like how they bring in all the different other Joes of the area, like they're all throughout the country. But I mean, granted, Joe's bringing in more tigers than anyone else in this country, which again, the whole loophole of laws of never having, like, it's illegal to buy a tiger, but as long as it's bred somewhere in the country, you can get it from someone, which I still don't understand the loophole. It's like deeper into the laws than that, but like the fact that you can still get a tiger cub and own it, even though it's illegal to bring it into the country, you can still distribute it. Like that alone, there should be something to bar against these people being able to buy animals. Like it makes no sense how you can keep it as a conservational purpose, but it's illegal to be doing it, but you can make money off of something that's illegal. Yes, like we do it all the time with the government doing the whole drugs and stuff like that. But again, moving forward, they bring in Tim Stark, the wildlife in need. They touch on him a few times throughout the series, but they only like kind of show him here and there. Um, his whole mentality, which I'd like to see more into him, but his whole idea was to make more animals and not eliminate the source. So his whole idea was, well, if we breed more animals, no matter what the inbred gene pool is, it will be fine. But your inbreeding and your breeding is not doing anything for the source of the tigers and the big cats in other countries. You're not spreading the gene pool anywhere. The tighter you keep the gene pool, the harder it is going to be to spread any more out there, because of the worst traits and attributes and genes that you're spreading within that gene pool out in other areas, which is going to be harder because they're not going to be adapted to being out there. You're not going to spread healthy, strong will survive basically theory. I just want to touch a little bit on that. I wish they would have touched more on him. I mean, they bring him back and forth because he's kind of involved with Joe and I think Doc as well. But then in comes literally the embodiment of Tony Montana, and the fact that like he is Scarface. I think Tony Montana. Either way, Scarface. His whole mentality was that he can smuggle drugs into the country because there's a small penalty of smuggling animals. So if he can smuggle both of those together, there's no issue with doing it. And he'd rather get more. He'd rather get caught up in smuggling animals, because the drug thing is gonna disappear. The fact that he only got 12 years for doing everything like that, and the whole thing also with the interaction of love and passion for these animals. I understand you have a love for them, but don't disguise it as a passion for animals. If you're a collector, just like a collector of cars. Yeah, you may love and have a passion for it, but like it's just a collection. It's nothing more than that. It's not. These are something that I so revere that I'm willing to help protect. They're not doing any of that. They're not protecting it. This guy wasn't protecting it. He was using his drugs to feed his animal habit, and I think he mentioned that several times. And it's the whole idea of, like I was saying earlier, people that are crazy and have money, they just think they can get away with anything, and most of the crazy money hungry people have these wild animals. it makes no sense. And he also goes into, we have to breed because there's no more environment for him. Yeah, the environment's closing down around where these animals are, but instead of filtering your money into something that is your passion should be feeding into seeing them more so in the wild environment. If you feed that money, if all these people had all this money to do the conservation that they're doing just so they can make money off of having the animal handling, they could see more of these animals in the wild in their natural habitat, but they'd rather have the power and have all this fame because they have the money to do it. Which, if I had all the money in the world, I'd be out there trying to protect what I'm seeing. Why do you want to come and see an animal in a cage when you could see it in its natural environment? Like, I understand. Yes, I understand zoos and stuff like that, but like, you could still have that, and you could have that for your children and your further children and everything like that. You could see them back in their natural habitat. Like, why do you want this power over these animals? What is missing in your life that you have to have this power? And then he reveals, even though Doc says his all of his animals are bred there and everything like that, or he's making sure the animals that he has in there are like conservational purposes. He was supplying Doc was supplying Mario with these animals. If you're doing conservation, you selling to private companies and private people, you're not doing anything for conservation, because then again, they're just breeding or keeping them in there and they're selling them for money. There's no reason you should be selling more of these animals for money. Again, you're guising your conservation for your fame. And then we move into the mind-blowing aspect of Doc's place. He is very fervent in saying he doesn't have a colt. What do you have then? You have a family that you don't have a family. He brings these people in, these normally young women in, and he's grooming them from the age of like 16, 17, and making them. His line was, "You're a garbage person. I'll make you great." And I understand, like, I don't understand cult mentality because I've never obviously been in a cult, but the fact that like he's using these animals, again, his power to groom these people in here. Like, it's very easy to bring someone into that mentality because you have these animals. And if I understand, like I was saying earlier, I've applied to so many jobs and I can't get into them. It's easy to see how these people got into it, and I kind of contradicted myself there. I understand that. But it's easy to see like how, like, ooh, I have this ability to work with these animals and hopefully I can move up, but you can't because you're locked into it. It's wild to think that he's telling these people, oh, you can leave whenever you want, but you can't. You literally can't. Again, Victoria and I talked about it. She's I feel like more bound, and I should have had her come and talk about this a little bit more. But the idea of just like keeping these people here, and these people are stuck. The one woman got out, and like and hearing that like he made them get breast implants, he kept them in horse stalls and stuff like that. Like, nothing about that makes you a good leader or a good person to kind of show off all this. Like, he is just so power hungry with all this. It's mind boggling that like he even thinks that like owning these animals is doing something better further out there. He thinks the big contradiction of thinking, he thinks Carol is duping people, but the fact that he's forcing these women, not so forcing, but he's keeping them in a mindset of constant work and constant just, you have to keep doing this, but you can leave at any point. You can't, because now you have to work for this, and where are you going to go after this? That he's only paying them a certain amount, so they can't leave, and even if they're paying them more than normal, or he has one of these wives up in these houses, they're already so fixated at this point that they're not going to make it any further. And he has this whole conservation thing where he's like, well, we need to breed and everything like that. Having multiple litters of inbred tigers and lions isn't going to do anything for you. They show a chart of showing the sweet spot of owning these animals. If you're a conservationist, you shouldn't be saying you're owning these animals and creating a litter and handling them. He euthanizes these cubs, or so what they're saying. If you look at all these animals, they're fat as shit. So I'm assuming he probably euthanizes them or uses them feed for like the crocodiles and the other tigers, which any sane person or any sane conservationist shouldn't be doing that. I don't understand where he thinks that raising these animals and then showing them off to people and then getting rid of them and then just recycling, like, yeah, recycling environments. So he's doing that, but it's just wild to think that no one's coming out to speak against this. Like, no one's going to environmental groups and having them come after him. I get Joe is a big one, so that's why most of those groups are focused on him. But this guy is profiting off of being a cult. Like, he's a cult leader. The people are coming and funding his cult. Like, that makes no sense that no one's gotten up and spoken about this. So it's just ridiculous that like someone can get to such a high power. Like, Victoria said, it's Jim Jonesy. It's very Jim Jonesy, and just the fact that the government isn't willing to step in even after something like this, seeing like this man is basically holding these people captive, and he's using it under a zoo or conservationist thing to kind of show that like it's at least Joe, my next point, at least Joe says he admits he basically has a cult at this point. He knows what he's doing. He knows that the power of having these animals is going to bring people in. Then, and that's the only thing that I kind of, that's why I'm not as against like I don't think what he's doing is right, but like he at least is more open and more show worthy about being like, look, this is what I'm doing. I love these cats, but I know how to bring people in, and I know why they're bringing them in. But he also thinks because he owns these animals, his fame is going to help everyone understand why these animals are so great. But he's doing the same thing. He chooses the people that have nothing. And it's very easy at that point, if they have nothing, that he's going to bring them in and he's going to keep them trapped and he's going to keep them in these horrible situations just to feed his ideals and passions, and just be brought up that, oh, he is a god amongst all these people as well. It's just it's the whole idea that the government's supposed to be here to help these animals, and they have the EPA and everything like that, and these environmentalist groups and the FBI, but they take so long to do something about it. Which I get, they have to build a case against them, but like the fact that like he's constantly doing this, and they could interview all these people, and like no one's willing to go against them because they're so terrified of them. It's heartbreaking to see that these people can't get out of what they're doing, and when they do, they're so broken, they're so distraught. It hurts to see. It's just like I was saying, the use of these animals to collect people is what I wrote down. That shouldn't be the case. That should never be a case that you should be so power hungry that you need to collect people to fund what you're doing. They're not. It's showing that they're not doing this for the conservationism animals. Are doing it so they can feel loved and feel happy and feel like they're in power. Like why why use these poor animals as a way to get people? Find another way to do it. Find another pyramid scheme to bring people in. Like Carol, Joe, and Doc. They're all cult mentality leaders, and the fact that there's people are backing them is wild. It's just so wild. That's all I have for that one. Number 3 is either going to be tomorrow, like later tonight or tomorrow. I'm going to probably say tomorrow, probably because I'm going to rewatch episode 4, just so I can write down some notes and then be able to do both of those tomorrow. Thanks, fam. I'll see you all later. Peace.